Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:07, and we're flying through this morning like a 747 jumbo jet airliner. Fast, efficient, and luxurious.
And
it's O'Connor and Company.
Land.
Coming up in 30 minutes. We always make an effective landing. It's not always smooth. Sometimes it's a little bumpy, but then Chris Plant takes over and it's high flying. Coming up in 30 minutes, Governor Bob Ehrlich of Maryland. It's Larry O'Connor with Mercedes Schlapp. Good morning, Mercedes.
Hi, good morning. Morning's been going quickly, so.
It has, and it's going to get even quicker as we plow through the tariff story now. We're going to update you. Been talking about it all morning, of course, but let's bring in KT McFarland, because KT, former Deputy National Security Advisor, President Trump, author of Revolution. KT, I think it was last week when I said, help me out here. All these tariffs, it's, people screaming about the European Union and coffee from Colombia and all the people's hair on fire. And I said, KT, this is really all about China, isn't it? And what did you say, KT? What did you say?
I did, Larry. It is all about China. And guess what, Larry? It is all about China.
So explain how we got here. The way that Trump went about doing this, because of the confines of the World Trade Organization, you got to do this blanket thing and tariffs for everyone. But then because China blinked, because China retaliated, now it's game on. Is that right?
Yeah, it is game on, and we win the game. It could be rocky. It could take a while, but we win the game. And what Trump is mastered, it was always going to be U.S. versus China in this trade war. But what Trump has now managed is he's gotten everybody else on his side, right? Yeah. Because he's now going to negotiate these bilateral trade agreements one at a time. Other countries realize whoever is first to negotiate the trade deal is in a better position because, the funds will be diverted there. They have no disruption in their production. So there'll be a real, impetus for countries, A, to negotiate, and B, to negotiate quickly. And what does that do? Leaves China on. It's brilliant. It's all deal.
Exactly.
It's so brilliant.
I just want to understand this again, and I feel like my job when I'm talking to someone like you, KT, is to ask the questions that person driving on the Beltway is wondering in his own head. So when you say he's got the rest of the world on his side, so over the course of the last 8-9 days when the tariffs were announced, China's been working behind the scenes. China's been talking to these countries saying, hey, look what Trump's doing. Jump on board with us. We're good. We'll take care of you. And instead, these countries all went back to Trump and said, let's fix this. So in other words, he's sort of rallied the troops here. Nobody wants to get in bed with China. They know China's a threat. They know China cheats. And now China has sort of isolated themselves. Is that right?
Yeah, and what President Trump understood was, the primary and fundamental nugget that President Trump is basing this all on is that other countries need to sell their goods to us more than we need to buy from them. America is everybody's biggest trading partner, right? If you're the country of Colombia and you have a tariff or you're not allowed to sell goods in the American market, your economy collapses because your whole economy is based on selling flowers to the U.S. So President Trump, understanding that, has whacked them on the head, all the other countries, and then eased it up the minute they said, wait, we want to talk. And so they've all been rewarded. Now, you have to also remember that they've all had dealings with China, and China has cheated them as much as they've cheated us. So they're not happy when the Chinese called, you said last week, in the last couple of days, the Chinese have been calling everybody saying, see, America's so crazy, come aboard with us. And they're all saying, whoa, not so fast. I'm going to jump on the American side.
I got to ask you, KT, China did say they were going to put 84% tariffs against the U.S., that's now in effect. I have to ask you, though, because the President Trump has had a good relationship with President Xi in China. Do you think that there will be resolution into the future in terms of how these tariffs play out, specifically with China, where we can find a little more of common ground with them?
It depends. I think the ball is in China's court. We're now tariffing each other out of, to the extreme. But remember, China sells more stuff to us than we sell to them, right? So when we impose sanctions, that just cripples their economy. when they impose sanctions on us, China's already not let us sell in a lot of their markets. The weapon China has is it owns a lot of U.S. debt.
KT, yesterday, Treasury, before the announcement that they were pausing for 90 days and reducing tariffs to 10%, except for China, which we increased, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was speaking in front of a group, and they were talking about the tariffs, of course, and he was asked about Spain threatening to say, well, maybe we should do business with China. And he responded to that, but then he said this right at the end that caught my ear. Listen.
Going somewhere. And I think, Rob, at the end of the day, that we can probably reach a deal with our allies, with the other countries that have been long-term. They've been good military allies, not perfect economic allies.
That right there, when he said they've been good military allies, he's sending a message there saying, guys, let's not forget that you rely on us for your security, right? I mean, that's a big part of this story, too, that we become the security force in this country, keeping all of these trade lines free and open. And am I overreading the fact that he laid that out there to just remind everybody how critical they need us for that?
We provide 75% of the funding of NATO. Now, other NATO countries are going to finally ante up. But remember, what did we just do 2 weeks ago? We took out the Houthis. Now, what did that make a difference for? Shipping in the Red Sea. So that's not our shipping. We don't have a lot of shipping that goes through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. But guess who does? All the European countries, all the Middle East countries. So for us, we just did everybody in the world a huge favor. I mean, so yeah, when Scott Bessent says that, he's reminding them, hey, by the way, you really need us for a lot of other things in addition to trade. But listen to what Bessent says. He's been on television a lot, giving interviews, and he's the guy, he's probably in the entire United States, probably even in the world, one of the top people who understands global markets and risk and arbitrage, all these things. And he is one of the people, and we're so lucky to have him in that job because he is really driving a lot of this. And now he has now been tapped as the guy who's going to do all the bilateral negotiations. And, think of where the world is going to be next week when we talk if the United States has an indication that we're going to have a trade agreement that's, almost finished or in the works with Japan or Great Britain or, name your country. It's all of a sudden the tide will start turning and everybody will say, yikes, America is doing these deals. This is not arbitrary back and forth. Let's make sure we do our deal, too, because we want to have a good relationship. So at the end of the day, China could be isolated, but China has weapons against us, and that is our great vulnerability, is that, that $2 trillion a year that the Democrats and the Republicans have forced us to spend beyond our budget. So that $2 trillion a year, somebody's lent us that $2 trillion, and China is one of the big debt holders of, United States debt. And what you saw yesterday was all of a sudden it looked like that somebody was selling off debt, that borrowing, that loan, those loans that, and we think maybe was it China who was either doing it to screw us or doing it because they were so screwed they needed to. So look, this is not over. This is going to be every day. There's going to be a new headache story, and every day it'll be like the headlines today. What were they? Trump, genius or fool? Was this deliberate or was did he get played? So I think in this case, always count on President Trump. Unlike every other leader in the world, he understands business, he understands global finance, and the people he has advising him are the best in the world.
When we formed this reconstituted morning show on WMAL 4 years ago and called it O'Connor and Company, we wanted it to be smart. We wanted it to be effective and impactful. We wanted it to be entertaining and not reactionary. And Katie McFarland, your voice goes a long way in making that happen, and the way you've been able to educate all of us here every morning about what's really going on here and how China's the target and we're just getting started. It's been so valuable. So we appreciate it. We value you as part of what we do every morning.
Oh, gosh, I'm blushing if you could only see. Well, anyway, for all of us, including the United States, just stay the course. We're going to get there, and it's going to be really good.
Everybody chill out and stop listening to people who are screaming and pounding the table and just trying to get you riled up. That's no way to start your day. It is 8:16.